The day caller, that's just good old patriarchy.
See, now toxic purity culture and policing and shaming other people's lifestyle and bedroom habits actually screams more patriarchy to me than a day caller does, but let's get into it. Hey guys, my name is Kelsey. For those of you that don't know, I am a spicy educator. I am a somatic sex and intimacy coach, and I specialize in trauma and conditioning. So let's talk about this for a second. The very first thing that I want to say is I am not team trad wife in any way, shape, or form, okay? But I would like to reframe this for a lot of people, okay? If the conversation was an LGBTQ couple was presenting the day caller situation, and the rhetoric that is currently being sent to the trad wives was coming from people of a heavily religious background, would it still hit the same? And for me, the answer is no. And that's where I really feel the need to step in here, because a lot of the commentary, a lot of the rhetoric is really, really harmful. And in this weird need to attack the trad wife community for what they're doing right now with all of this, which I don't agree with. We'll talk about that later, right? But in trying to attack them for their lifestyle, you are heavily attacking another community, which is the quink community and the LGBTQ community, right? Because as much as they would like to rebrand what they're doing under the sense of faith and biblical and whatever, right? It is kink content. It is quink content, right? And so when we're talking about this, I think it's really important to have that at the forefront, because this is not the norm. And I don't think that anybody within the quink community is laying claim to this is something that we do, or this is something that we're supporting, right? Per se. There's a lot that I don't love about it, right? But again, I think that we can come at this from a, ooh, this makes me feel uncomfortable, or, that's kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about that. Or, ooh, yikes, I definitely would not want to participate in that, right? And we can take personal responsibility for ourselves without shaming and vilifying and criminalizing a lifestyle that we don't agree with or that we wouldn't take on ourselves, right? Because here's the thing for me, you guys, this would have never come into my space, right? So none of this would have even made it into my space if it weren't for the absolute uproar that has come from it, right? And my algorithm is full of quinky content, right? I heavily interact with it. I love it. I participate, right? Do I participate in the caller situation? No, I don't, right? But there's still a place for me under the umbrella, right? And I think that's something that's such a beautiful thing, right? And you can't talk about the quink community without having a conversation in relation to what the LGBTQ community has done in the creation of the quink community, right? Because we're talking about a group of people that do not conform to the heteronormative societal conditioning and culture, right? It's things that are taboo, they're risky, they're maybe a little edgy, right? And things that, your everyday person doesn't necessarily participate in, but that is also heavily because of the patriarchy, right? Having things be very vanilla doesn't necessarily mean it is, right? On a good day, I still love me some vanilla, right? But, and that's, I think, another thing that's really interesting, right? Is how the patriarchy is so interwoven into our lives, right? But it means different things for different people, right? Because for me, I don't really see a difference between a collar and a wedding ring in terms of symbolism, right? It's just a symbol that is, the meaning of it is between the two people that agreed to it being that symbol, right? For a lot of people, they've reclaimed the wedding ring, right? I could ask you, is a wedding ring totally conforming to the patriarchy? Is that good old-fashioned patriarchy? What about if you've taken your husband's last name? Is that just good old-fashioned patriarchy? Because I've chosen to keep my name, right? I made that decision a long time ago because it didn't feel good for me, right? And my name very much honors 3 matriarch lines. So for me, I was like, yeah, no. I saw a wonderful, wonderful post. It was really, really interesting because it was a female content creator, right? She's a wonderful Black woman. If I can find her page, I'll tag it. But she was having the conversation about the fact that she never took her husband's last name, specifically because when she was going through school and she actually got her degree, right, and became a doctor, right, it was under her name. And she had made a comment. She said something. She was like, well, my husband didn't become a doctor. I did. I put in that hard work. So I'm going to get the recognition under my name, right? And there were a ton of women in the comment section that just had like an absolute uproar over this, right? And I'm sitting here and I was like, you know what? Hell yeah. I like that. That's awesome, right? So, and there's a lot of different ways that people are currently reclaiming things meant to the patriarchy, right? And different symbols. Because again, what's the difference? I would ask you, you know, what's the difference between a day collar and a ring, or getting somebody tattooed on your body, right? The symbol is what each individual in the relationship, right, makes it mean, okay? And so I think that's really important. The other thing, you guys, that I really just have to say is I really think that unless you are a part of the Quink community, speaking on it in a harmful rhetoric is just so distasteful. If you are well immersed in the community, a lot of these posts that are coming out, specifically with the harmful rhetoric, right, wouldn't be, right? I think there's an uproar from people within the Quink community because it's like, dude, can you just call it Quink? Like, call it what it is. Like, stop trying to rebrand it. Stop trying to take it away from what it is so that you can feel better about what you're doing, right? I think that's really where more of the uproar comes in for it, right? And less about the fact that these people are wearing collars, right? You guys, if you know anything about the Quink community, right? Communication, consent, personal accountability, right, is so ingrained within that community in ways that just your traditional relationships don't function, and would function so much better if the conversations that were happening within the Quink community were happening in everyday conversations, right? Talking about negotiations, talking about boundaries, right? And being able to advocate for yourself. And so I think that we really need to kind of change the tone on how we are presenting this, because there is separation, right? And while what they are doing is very clearly Quink content, right, the way that they are going about it would not be considered normal practices within the Quink community, right? And I think that's really important. To be honest, I think a lot of the men that are participating in this from the trad wife side of it are probably men that wanted to be involved within this community and were probably kicked out for not being able to, you know, honor a safe word and honor a boundary and understand full consent, right? Consent is a really, really big thing. And so they're trying to rebrand it. They're trying to rewrite the rules in a way that works for them, right? And for me, I am just a person, especially when it comes to things in the bedroom. There's all sorts of things that I'm willing to try. There's all sorts of things that at the moment, it's a no for me, right? But if they are two legal adults of legal age, actively consenting, why are we commenting on it? Why are we sending attack dogs at it by stitching this and going, this is harmful, this is disgusting, this is this is that, right? There's all sorts of things that go on within the Quink community that I think would be heavily ostracized, right? To talk about in everyday conversation, to implement in everyday roles, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to vilify and criminalize and make something wrong with it so that we feel comfortable, just because we wouldn't participate or it makes us feel uncomfortable.